Welcome once again to Media That Made Us, the podcast about the art and stories that set us on the path to becoming who we will be. This week, we have Aaron Olson of the OK So Podcast Network, ostensibly to talk about Orson Scott Card, but, well, let's just say the subject gets away from us a little bit. So you're going to hear a lot about a lot of things. So, join us, won't you?
Starship Troopers, and I do want to talk about the connective tissue between like the golden age sci-fi and that sort of late 80s, early 90s sci-fi.
Okay, I will try to restrain myself because I think I might have an entire Heinlein podcast living in my soul now. Like I was literally up last night thinking about Starship Troopers as I'm wont to do. But like I think I finally have cracked like what is wrong with most of the criticism of it. So I'll try not to like I'll restrain myself. But yeah, we can totally talk that way. Because man, the relationship somebody would have with Orson Scott Card if you like Ender's Game, and the relationship that you would inevitably have to have if you like anything by Heinlein is very similar now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we might as well roll into it. Yeah. So if someone was to ask, who is Aaron? What do you hope the answer is?
Oh my God. This is a therapy session, isn't it? I should do that sometime. Who am I? I don't know. I'm a dabbler.
Mm-hmm.
All of my friends have these fandoms that they're part of, and
sure.
I go broad, much less than deep, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Nothing wrong with that.
I'm an expat Californian living on the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
But I grew up like right in the middle of the Silicon Valley changing the world before it was all tech bros.
Yeah. The Oregon Valley or the Oregon Trail generation kind of, right? Where you're old enough to remember when computers came around and then the internet came around, and like you were like, we both were. So I think you and I are pretty similar ages, where it's like, oh yeah, this is a new technology and we get to watch it change the world. And but we remember what the world was like before, you know?
Yeah. I mean, we had Unix terminals in my house when I was 6.
Mm-hmm.
My dad worked at multiple Silicon Valley companies, eventually at SGI, if you've heard of that one.
Oh yeah. No, I know SGI.
And then went hard left and started out into the frontiers of e-commerce. And so we literally had a startup in our garage. Like any good Silicon Valley house.
Yeah.
I don't know, but like, you know, shoebox, those shoebox Macs were in our elementary school. We learned to, I was touch typing in like 4th, 5th grade.
Oh yeah.
Honestly was a saving grace for me because my handwriting is worse than my third graders. I'm
right there with you on that one. Did they make you like
the
do
black
the touch
plastic
typing
cover?
Yeah, with the black. Yeah. And the
and then like the stickers on the home keys.
Oh yeah. God, and like the time period where they knew that computers were going to be educational, but they hadn't completely figured out how yet. And so like I distinctly remember only one class period where we all just played Civilization. like how did we get 30 copies of Civilization? And I guess it kind of makes sense. It's about history, but like, why was this a thing that we did and then never did again?
Yeah. Oh God, Civ.
Yeah.
There's apparently a Civ 7 coming.
There's always going to be more Civs.
Yeah.
Like they're just going to keep making them until they're
just going to, ventriloquist the dummy, the Sid Meier's corpse. That was dark. Sorry.
That's fine. Whatever. So I can make some guesses now based on what you've already said, but like what kind of kid were you?
Early reader. Partially because my mom actually taught me how to read before I was in kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was in a complicated. Speaking of lots of different things that I know for some reason. It was in a complicated phase of education where there was sort of a argument going on about the best way to teach reading, whether it was phonics or whole language. And my mom was a phonics partisan, and the school was teaching whole language. So I got both barrels there. But, then fell into the like early advanced reader equals good student trap.
Sure.
And was able to talk my way through and out of things that I maybe shouldn't have been able to.
There's definitely something to be said for like I don't know if you got this term applied to you or not, but the sort of gifted kid paradox where like you're smart enough to make your way through a bunch of the early material just because you're able to
brute
just
force
immediately
it.
grok it, right?
Yeah.
And then like you never learn any of the stuff that is like actually how to learn things.
Yeah.
Like you just skated by on the fact that you could just get it, and then at some point along the way you hit that brick wall where you're like, oh shit, all of those like study skills that I was supposed to be developing for 18 years are just not here anymore, and oh shit, what do I do now?
Or you go over to the middle school and you have one bad grade and just hit that death spiral.
Yeah.
Where you're like, I failed, therefore I am bad, as opposed to I failed, therefore I should learn from this.
Yeah. Or I tried something and I'm not immediately amazing at it, therefore I am going to drop it and never return.
Or I am awful. Even worse.
Yeah. Well, and okay, so you said you grew up in California. So you that was your whole childhood? You moved to as an adult? Okay.
Came east for college and stayed.
Okay.
Fewer wildfires.
So were you, as you said, you're a voracious reader. At some point I'm going to have to start a guest bingo where like things that people, when I ask these questions about what kind of kids they were, like voracious reader, nerdy kid, like there's a couple of things that like, but I think voracious reader is a free space at this point. Like,
I mean, you're asking us about stuff that we, consumed, and
I know the waters I swim in. It's become very apparent to me.
Yeah. Well, and I had to also because aside from the computers, my parents weren't very much in the like you can watch whatever TV you wanted because aside from like Saturday morning cartoons, it was like PBS.
Gotcha.
And not whenever you wanted, but like for certain things like Masterpiece Theater.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And we didn't have a video game system. I mean, we had computers, and I had a computer fairly early of my own, and got to play computer games on that, but like no video game systems or whatever.
Okay, so you're from the era when like if you go to buy a video game now, you can get all of the information ahead of time. Like you watch the entire game on YouTube, right? So you know exactly what you're getting into. But like this was the era when like either you'd get like a floppy disk that somebody copied and you have no fucking clue what it is, or you'd buy something at the store based off of the back of the box, right? Reading this stuff. So like everybody I know has some game that they either half remember or vividly remember that's just some wild ass shit.
Big Red Racing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What is this?
It was like a racing game. I picked it up at it was a racing game for MS-DOS.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know. It was goofy
early
and
Polygon.
funny and yeah. I don't know how to explain it. I just like it's stuck in my memory. But like you play, you drive around tracks on like all over the earth, and there's like races on the moon and Mars and stuff.
I was just saying, based entirely off the screenshots from a cursory Google, it gives me kind of Lego Machines or Micro Machines video game vibes a little bit. Kind of goofy, goofy racing.
Yeah. It was like one of those things where, like you described, I was wandering around Fry's Electronics with money burning a hole in my pocket. And you're like, what should I buy? And no, I can't buy Leisure Suit Larry 3 because my parents would notice.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you probably were at like that's like ground zero Fry's too. Like if you're talking about Silicon Valley, right? Yeah.
which sadly is no longer, that Fry's is no longer there. And
none of them are.
No.
They're all gone.
It's
They're
sad.
all, yeah, it died a sad death.
What a weird store.
Yeah, a weird store, but also had a really long zombie period where it was like, this thing's dead but still open. The one in the first one in DFW was actually, they bought some other electronics store and they never remodeled it. So like there were like stuffed Longhorns like on like the mezzanine area. It was like really weirdly decorated.
I mean, that's like the Fry's brand though.
Oh, really?
Each store was weirdly decorated.
Oh yeah,
like,
yeah.
Ours was like a Western theme, but I know that there was one that was like down in LA, I think, that was like alien themed or something.
Yeah. Well, no, they got sadly pedestrian as they went on because they ran out of ideas or whatever, and they were just like, they all sort of looked the same. I worked at one for a little while. Yeah, audience, if you don't, it's possible that some of you do not know Fry's Electronics. It was just the big electronics store in a lot of Metroplex areas. Like it was like a supersized Best Buy. Really.
Yeah, it was like Best Buy, but also with like Radio Shack stuffed inside.
Yes, it was like they cramped
like
Best
components.
Buy. You could bet like capacitors and resistors and stuff like that, and the tools that you would need to work on them. So it'd be like a Best Buy smashed up with a Radio Shack with also like just a ton of really weird media too. Like they were it was the only place that I remember that you could buy anime for a while.
And
like,
groceries
that wasn't like
too.
Yeah, which wasn't just like a dedicated anime shop. Yeah, so very strange stores, and they have now since gone the way of all of all things in capitalism will eventually, right? Like they're gone. So were you a big sci-fi kid?
Yeah.
Was that your jam, or were you?
I mean, I was all over the map. Obviously, I was a big Redwall fan, but I think that I started early with like Isaac Asimov robot stories.
Yeah.
And
classic.
And a lot of other Golden Age sci-fi that like my dad had picked up here and there because he occasionally would travel a lot for work and would just get books and just fill the library.
That's cool. So you just kind of any kind of genre fiction. Yeah.
Although less after Redwall, less fantasy and more sci-fi, I think. Gotcha. Like I wasn't, I know some people are big like Wheel of Time fans and stuff like that. Sure. And I just it missed me.
It's weird because it's like when you're figuring out what resonates with you, like it's like what kind of trash can you put up with? Like a little bit, like it's like what features of these genres will actually like turn you off more than what turns you on a little bit. Because like sci-fi has its problems, fantasy has a different set of problems sometimes that like can be and it all comes from probably the progenitors, like if everybody, because every fantasy author wants to be J.R.R. Tolkien and every sci-fi author wants to be Isaac Asimov. So when did you encounter Ender's Game for the first time?
It had to have been like 6th grade or middle school, somewhere around there.
Oh yeah, so it really got you right at the that's the demo, right?
Yeah, for a Chosen One story, yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Chosen One plus Magical School, basically.
It's Harry Potter but in space, right?
With some ironic lasting issues that are very similar.
No, there's a reason why that came up is because I've been talking to somebody else about it the other day. I
mean, it's got all of the like smart kid catnip in there. It's the like, no, you actually are smart. No, you actually are special. No, you actually do have a higher purpose than just being told that you're dumb because you're smart, or however people, I don't know. The 90s and 80s were weird.
I mean, I don't know. Like that's pretty universal though. Like the chosen one kid.
It's cool to be smart now.
That's true. But like, yeah, that's true. But like the chosen one narrative of like, oh, it turns out that the thing that everybody dislikes you for turns out to actually be your saving grace the whole time. It's pretty classic.
Yeah.
And also especially for the middle, like that's a good age to hit a chosen one story. But like specifically that one was designed like to hit middle schoolers. Because like if I recall correctly, like that's the age of everybody. Like it's straight up like, yeah, you could be pulled off to the battle school. You know, you are the.
Although Ender's like 9, I think, in the first book.
Oh really? Oh geez,
yeah,
that's even fucking darker. Okay.
Yes, around a whole bunch of like teenagers.
Yeah. Okay, so for anybody who's coming into this cold, what's like the 10,000 foot view of what Ender's Game is? Like, what is it in its most broad sense?
So it's set on an Earth that has been through 2 previous interstellar wars with a race of bug creatures. Very creatively called the Formics.
Hey man, it's better than Starship Troopers The Bugs.
Yeah. And they're kind of on a war footing after that anyway, because they suspect there's going to be a third one. Well,
yes.
Quote unquote suspect.
No.
Spoiler alert for a 30-year-old book.
Yeah. By the way, I haven't been saying this to the audience, but fucking spoilers abound. Like, you know, if you don't want to be spoiled about this shit, then like, don't be listening. Like, we're just gonna talk this shit up.
So yeah, Earth is moderately fucked. And there's like, for some reason, there's birth control, like strict birth control regulations. And Teresa and John Paul Wiggin, they have 2 kids. Peter, who is brilliant but a psychopath, and Valentine,
as all teenage boys are.
Well, I mean, yes. And Valentine, who's brilliant but too empathic. Gosh, gender roles.
That won't come back at all.
Yeah,
be a running theme.
And neither of them are the chosen ones. So the world government tells the parents to have a third kid, who turns out to be Andrew or Ender. Which is a rarity. There's also this thing about them having like computers implanted in their necks that are like watching all of the things they do to see if they're eligible to go up to battle school or if they have to be, lousy proles.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, because it's a whole thing with like he has like a seizure or something when they take the minder out.
Weird. Okay.
Anyway, he beats a kid to death. Because he's tired of being bullied, and then is taken up to an orbiting platform called Battle School because they saw that he's not only smart, but can use force if necessary, but also not like to the point of being over the top like his brother.
Yeah, he's got the killer instinct, but he doesn't like relish in it. I guess is the balance they're looking for, right?
Yeah. Anyway, and then there's a whole like magical school thing, except science fiction instead of magic. Yeah. Enemies get it down, etc. The side plot with the like weird, grotesque choose your own adventure game that they all play is weird too.
There's a lot of that middle section really meanders as he becomes the special boy, right?
Yeah. Although what's kind of scary is that it actually kind of reminiscent of, I mean, not the level of grotesqueness, but a lot of schools now are using computer adaptive testing that adjusts based on the kids' needs, which is creepy to think about. Anyway, and then through various things that happen. I'm just rambling now. Sure. Ender eventually kills off an entire species with a molecular disruption weapon.
Yep. It turns out that the training that they've been doing this whole time to prepare for the war has actually been them fighting the war.
Right. And because they have faster than light communication and they've been controlling the ships, etc.
Yep. Given orders. And then it turns out that he wins, and then he's a specialist boy of all, but even too special to return to Earth, and is sent off into the
because in the meantime, there's a B plot where Peter and Valentine are doing this whole thing where they're like political commentators on the web, and
back when we all thought that blogging was going to be influential on the world.
Wait, shoot, it's Demosthenes and
Locke.
Locke, yeah.
Yep.
Demosthenes and Locke, yeah. And Peter managed to become the hegemon, the leader of the world government, because that's obviously what psychopath teenagers need to do. It's control an entire world, and is basically like, I can't let Ender come back because he would be the obvious, returning Caesar, etc.
Sure, yeah.
And so gins up this whole like, well, he's a xenocide, so maybe we shouldn't let him back on Earth, that sort of thing. And then we get 2 very different books after this.
Yeah, and then a whole nother series after that.
more than just a whole nother one. He's written a prequel with the Second Formic War.
Oh, God damn it.
And whatever his name is, Graf.
Yeah. Holy shit, this list.
Yeah. I have not read any of those.
The last one came out in 2021.
Yeah.
There's another one coming out.
Yeah, I stopped after Ender's Shadow.
I got to Shadow of the Hegemon before I realized what pile of shit I was wading through.
Yeah.
I don't think I finished that one. But yeah. Okay.
But like Speaker for the Dead is a fascinating book, and I feel like I would appreciate it a lot more now if I felt like reading it again. Yes. I'm not going to.
The broad outline is that, as far as I can remember, because I haven't reread any of these since Shadow of the Hegemon, which was 2021. Jesus Christ. Okay, so but I remember that like the basic idea is the first one is a really good coming of age, like chosen one story. It's like a really perfect execution of that formula. Speaker of the Dead is a very interesting book with a lot of cool ideas in it.
Yeah.
And then they just get worse over time from there. And in fact, they get bad enough that they color my opinion of the original book and like how good it, like I think less of Ender's Game because of how bad the Shadow series is.
Yeah, I don't know.
And that's before you even get to Orson Scott Card's politics.
Yeah. But yeah, it's that book then made me be like, hey, sci-fi is cool. Sci-fi tackles modern questions and modern problems. Mm-hmm. Duh.
Yeah.
And, that combined with other books that I encountered at the same time really opened things up. And then there's Discworld, which we don't have to talk about because I have another podcast about that. But,
we got there's a whole book series on that one.
Yeah.
Or a whole podcast series on that one. We don't have to.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we have a broadly similar exposure to these. You hit them earlier than I did. Because I didn't hit them until midway through high school. And I have a fond affection for Ender's Game, and then they sort of slowly tumble off of a cliff at that point.
I mean the thing that really I think is most attractive to me about Ender wasn't just that he was intelligent, but he was really capable of like lateral thinking as opposed to brute force problem solving. Yeah. I mean, he did that too.
He doesn't just do the he doesn't just do the math and then do it better than everybody else, but comes up with novel solutions to a lot of his problems.
Right.
Except for when he kicks a kid's nose into his skull.
I mean,
Yeah.
Sometimes needs must.
Yeah. So that particular series led you into other sci-fi and stuff. Do you happen to remember what any of that might have been, like, that carried over, or
shelves and shelves and shelves of it?
Sure.
And at that point I was also like, once I'd read those ones, I was falling into, I mean, a lot, returning to the classics with that sort of modern perspective. Then, like, I mean, there probably were uncountable books that I checked out of the library and consumed whole cloth. The Retief series sticks out to me too.
Cool. And so obviously when I mentioned this project, you came right out with Ender's Game. Is there something about it that you're like, you can't leave it alone? It's not one of those. It's one of those things that like it keeps sort of living in your skull, even all these years later. Even if you don't feel like, it sounds like you haven't felt the need to return to it, but yet like it's the thing that came to mind, right?
Yeah. I mean, it partially, I think partially because of the themes and stuff that it works with, but then also because of like it was kind of a shibboleth for like if I would like another person, like Jude.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, you know, connecting over a shared like of a particular book, I think, was a very powerful thing, especially for nerds back then. I mean, now too, but like.
I can definitely believe that, because especially with the way, you know, a Chosen One story, a lot of other ones are more broadly, they cast their nets more broadly. Star Wars really allows anybody to be, to feel like Luke Skywalker, you know, or at least not anybody, but like a much broader net than Ender's Game, you know. Whereas Ender's Game is really aimed at like a particular kind of person. Like Orson Scott Card had somebody in mind for feeling themselves like they'd be like Ender. And therefore, it makes sense that if you identify with that character and you find somebody else who also identified with that character, that the two of you would share personalities that would be compatible, you know, because you both are, you know, smart kids who probably didn't have I'm guessing probably the best social skills in the world, you know, probably felt like outsiders, you know, interested in things that were outside of the mainstream, but like interesting and they like not, but like, you know, interested in esoterica and stuff like that, stuff that like it would make sense that you go, oh yeah, I can clock you as somebody else who would be cool.
Yeah, although I mentioned this earlier, how I went broad rather than deep. Like I think that one of the things I learned about from that sort of meta knowledge was like, how do I learn just enough about what somebody else likes so that I can talk with them and get them to tell me about stuff? Because then, you know, it's that social judo of like, I'm talking to you, therefore I must like you.
Right. Yeah. Well, and also that gives you a really interesting perspective on pieces of media that you maybe don't have a lot of experience with yourself, but you get the like the unique perspective of seeing the way other people are reacting to it and what it is about them that grabs it like, it's actually a very efficient way to experience media where you're like, I don't need to know the whole thing. Just tell me the good parts.
And there's totally like there's a cast that people get when they're talking about something that they really love. You know, like, I'm sorry, Justin, wrestling just doesn't do it for me, but I love hearing you talk about it. Like,
there is nothing better than hearing wrestling fans talk about wrestling. I'm 100% with you. Justin's a really good example, but it's something that's not universal, but I've seen it a bunch with different wrestling fans. Like when they get so passionate about it and like they light up and they live like, they've been there for this whole narrative and this whole ride, and like something about it, they're not particularly like complex stories, so they're easily like distilled down into a way that people can talk about them excitedly. It's fantastic to me. It's so much better knowing wrestling fans than actually being a wrestling fan, I think.
We say this as two non-fans.
No. I will say this with the experience as I watched wrestling every week for about 2 years in the 90s. I did my time in the trenches, for lack of a better term. And like, I realized it was fucking miserable. Like, it sucks because they're just like they're never going to end. Like there isn't like, the stories are cyclic, you know, and they're always doing like, and this is probably not the best era in like wrestling storytelling either, I'm guessing. But like,
wasn't that the Attitude Era?
I think so. I don't know. The only thing I really remember is that the Gravedigger was fucking awesome. That's the only thing I remember. I still have an affection for that character.
Something Gravedigger. No, was it Mankind?
Threw Mankind off of a 12-foot chain link, saying at Hell in the Cell. Yeah. But yeah,
I know the memes.
But yeah, like hearing other people who are really excited about it talk about it is lovely. Like their enthusiasm is great, and I'm glad I get to experience some of what they enjoy without having to actually like watch 4 hours of wrestling every week.
I mean, we would like, when we were decompressing from high school, we would be at like Ryan's house watching wrestling. You know, it was on, and we were like, "This is brain candy, I guess." But like, I didn't ever really understand that there was like a storyline or anything like that. they sort of hinted at it, but I never caught enough of it to actually like. It's like dipping into random episodes of like Coronation Street or something.
Yeah.
It's like
or
there's like 1,000 episodes a year.
Yeah. Or like you catch a rerun of Grey's Anatomy and you're like, this is all just noise.
Oh God, my favorite Grey's Anatomy story. My wife was watching that for a while and was like, I'm so nervous about like brain aneurysms now. And I'm like, isn't it a show about neurosurgeons? So obviously the only things that they're going to be dealing with are like brain aneurysms or like steel poles through somebody's head or,
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's a selection bias, right?
Yeah. It's like they're not going to show brain aneurysms on that animal control show.
No, that's true. So looking back, I mean, when was the last time you read any of the Ender's Game books?
Oh God, probably college, probably like early 2000s, because I had a weird experience with Orson Scott Card in like 2004. Yeah, late 2004.
Okay. Do you want to talk about that? Because you can't just say that.
Yeah. So I was at my first post-college job, working at a university library. And this job was such a post-college job. I was literally measuring the shelf space that journals took up because they were preparing to move them to an offsite location.
Okay, and they needed to know how many cubic feet of journals they had?
Right.
Yeah.
So, like, I had lots of spare time. So I was poking around, the early 2000s internet and found that Orson Scott Card had a blog. Oh, and Orson Scott Card has said a whole bunch of horrific things about bombing the Middle East into glass. And I was like, hey, you have your email address on here. I'm going to email you and say, I'm just really curious as a fan with multiple signed copies of books of yours, how you gel this with what you said about not bombing entire species into obliteration. And he was like, oh, you libtard, et cetera, et cetera.
That gels exactly with what I know about what I've heard about him. Yeah.
And I'm glad that I've lost access to that email address because otherwise I would occasionally I'm sure I would go back and look at it, just like poking that empty space where you lost a tooth. Like
yeah. I mean, there's that moment where you're like, obviously authors are just people, and so they're going to be fallible. And conversely, sometimes, good people are going to do bad things, but also sometimes assholes are going to write masterworks, right? Yeah. Like, it turns out that, like, this person is terrible, but he just so happened to write something that matters, despite himself in a lot of ways. I think the ongoing quality of the Ender's Game series, I think, definitely says something about how maybe that was a fluke, like he just kind of lightning struck down those first couple of books, and then,
or maybe he had a brain aneurysm. I don't know.
Could be.
Callback. Boom.
Don't be better at podcasting than me on my own podcast, man.
I'm not.
And navigating that world where you're like, this is something that mattered to you. This is something that was formative for you, and like that you thought about a lot, and that you also know that like it came from the mind of an asshole, like of a real dipshit.
While I was going to release parties for Harry Potter downtown Cambridge.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not the first time this idea has come up. I just talked to someone about Firefly, so that we had a whole thing about Joss Whedon, and also talked about Harry Potter for a moment too.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like having social media and all of these things, letting everybody have their entire ass hanging out online all the time. There's a lot of like early 2000s webcomics that I used to read that I'm now just like, whoa.
Yeah. If you were doing a webcomic in the early 2000s, you are one of three things. You are
rich.
me. You're me. You're an asshole, or you're trans.
Well, I'd put a fourth category in there that would be rich because Penny Arcade I feel like floats in
those guys are assholes.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Okay. I had them fully categorized in the asshole category.
I buy your bucket. Yeah.
I mean, like, I don't know. Actually, to find the actual other bucket, it's somebody like, who's the guy who did Schlock Mercenary? Howard Taylor.
Oh God, I read that one too.
Yeah, I read all the way through that thing. And that one actually good. Like, that holds up all the way through. It's asking anybody to read a webcomic is like asking them to cut off one of their own legs. Like you're asking for such an investment, and then with what appears to be no payoff, right? Most of the time.
Yeah, I missed Homestuck, thankfully.
Yes. Yeah. I thank God, but like.
Although I guess I would have understood the Gideon the Ninth stuff a little bit better.
I still need to check that one out. I hear good things. Everything I hear about it, it's like, this is wild. It sounds like it knows how stupid it is, and that sounds good.
I mean, you can listen to our episodes about it on our show. Cross promo. Boom.
Get some cross promo in there.
What was I going to say? Well, the other one that I'm like, I own multiple printed versions of it. Did you ever read Sluggy Freelance?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I think I even have the bunny somewhere.
Oh really? Wow. Yeah, that was a
that was a weird one.
God,
that was
a weird one.
That could have gone the way of Homestuck, honestly, with the level of lore that it gets into.
Oh yeah.
I don't know, and I don't care to know what happened to that guy. I think the webcomic still exists though, but I don't think it's gone full Dilbert.
Well, and there's like, man, there was a point where I was checking 50 or 60 webcomic pages every day, hitting like the open all bookmarks thing and just chugging through a bunch of them. And it's surprising how many, like, I guess I'm down to like 2 now. I think I'm still checking up on Elguna Shive and Questionable Content. Because almost all the other ones either ended or, turned into fucking Penny Arcade. But like, and you know what? The people who are still going out there, props to you, man. Because like,
it takes work to produce that.
Yeah, it takes work. It's like us. It's the closest thing that we have to like the Japanese mangaka thing, where like you have like a singular creator who sets out, and the only difference is that instead of being oppressed by a particular industry, they're like instead crushed under the weight of capitalism in general. There was a webcomic. Did you ever read Misfile?
Sounds familiar.
It started off as a pastiche of like guy wakes up as a girl, like mangas, manga, where like it was guy wakes up as a girl suddenly, only this time he's also a street racer. That's the whole like bit. And it went for like 7 years, and I am still mad about the way it ended because the guy chicken shit out his way of like because he created this hard choice, right? The guy wakes up as a girl, and actually in a really remarkable way still identifies very strongly as a guy, like experiences dysphoria. It's treated actually as a really reasonable like trans story. And so like really, really feels very personally that like he has to return to being a guy. But at the same time, all of this good stuff has happened in his life since then, or because of like happened retconned into a story because he had been a girl in the other universe. And so you're left at the end of the thing. Do you fix this or not? Do you go back to having the body and identity that you expect to have and that you feel comfortable with, or all of these like material benefits, including like several people who are now alive because you're in this timeline, and how do you weigh that? And the author of the and like that's a really good narrative choice of like how do you reconcile it. And his thing was like, okay, actually we're just gonna copy this dude so that there's both a girl version and a boy version, and we get both things of both ways. And I'm like, you fucking coward! Like you wrote a really good like a really really hard decision, and then you just like fuck it, never mind, easy third way out.
Yeah, I had one of those like 50 bookmark folders and lost it during a computer transition, and there was just like, do I care? No, I don't. Yeah. Okay, moving on.
Yeah, the other version of that is to slowly whittle them down. It's like you are clicking on them every week and then being like, the last time this updated, I didn't care about it. I didn't care. Like I don't care that it's still going. Oh wait, I forgot about Dresden Kodak, which is a fucking amazing one.
Yes.
Dresden Kodak is so good. Like,
yeah,
like legitimately one of the best pieces of fiction I can think of. Like, yeah, but yeah. I'm not. I will restrain myself. I will restrain myself from
we
gushing
can talk
about how good.
For a long time.
About how good AD is with their fucking webcomic. Okay, anyway, okay. So we're still talking about the weird, the way it is to live in a world where you're like, or like how to deal with a problematic fave, right? Like, which is. I've been dealing with it this week because I was thinking about Starship Troopers again, as I am wont to do, and it is hard to have a problematic. It's hard to have a fave more problematic than Robert A. Heinlein.
I mean, Isaac Asimov is pretty high up there.
Yeah, okay. I'll have to admit, I kind of missed the news announcement on that one, so I don't know. He wasn't my big one.
He was a what's it called, a missing stare, except that everybody knew.
What do you mean the missing stare? I'm
Yeah, the idea of like, you know, people have gotten so used to working around this guy's like issues that they didn't feel like there was a real problem, you know.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, he was rampant misogynist.
Yeah, okay.
Pretty just all around awful. Great writer though.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't know it from his, I mean, you know, there's a debate to be made about the female characters in his books. They felt slightly more progressive than his, you know, than the rest of the writers of his era.
Sure, but that's a low bar. I mean,
that's a low bar.
Yeah, I mean, like Heinlein would have argued that he was an egalitarian, but what he actually was just because he fervently he argued all the time that women are just as good as men in all these different ways and in every way. And I'm like, but what he actually meant was that women are just as good at being men if they set their minds to it. Like, because that's all of the good qualities that are in the world is all of the male qualities, and that women could be those if they wanted to be. And it's like, yeah, dude, that's not the same thing.
Yeah.
I've Googled, has Arthur C. Clarke been canceled? And I'm not getting anything. So I'm hoping maybe there's still one good one. I'm not going to look too hard at it lest the waveform collapse.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I loved Heinlein too, you know.
Yeah.
One of, here's a not so secret, if you actually know me, secret about me. I have an unhealthy obsession with a subgenre of science fiction, of which Heinlein has a sterling example, which is the generation ship that has forgotten that it's a ship. So Orphans of the Sky.
Orphans of the Sky.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I was blanking on the name there for a second. Yes, that is a weird fucking book, and that is legitimately good.
Yeah.
It's a good reveal because he plays it straight. He just that has a really good example of like, we're gonna treat the normal things, we're gonna treat the really weird things about our universe as completely normal, such that the audience may not notice how fucking strange everything is until like the big reveal happens. It's really, it's good. Yeah.
Yep. Unhealthy obsession with that genre.
Yeah. So, is there anything to be taken away from the Orson Scott Card version of this specifically? Like,
it's just funny that you know, I got there a little bit before everybody got there. Everybody who's like 10 years younger than us got there with She Who Must Not Be Named.
So, but it's like, it's one of those things where obviously I'd have to say, like, there's obviously the practical considerations of how do you interact with media while the author is still alive and around and can benefit from your interaction. Because like and that's what a large part of the debate about Miss Rowling is, where it's like, well, you know, okay, well, don't buy her books, pirate her books, or, you know, don't play the game, pirate the game, or like, don't play the game at all, because giving attention in an attention economy to anything, even if you're not doing monetary support, makes it culturally relevant, which increases the value of the thing. And like, it's like this whole big long thing. And that is all made easier once the person's dead. And
it's just their estate. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, or like the giant media conglomerate that bought the IP rights to everything that they do. Right. So like, but I think as I've been thinking about Heinlein, and this has got to apply. This will eventually, once he dies, apply to Card as well. The idea that like, if you can and must engage with media that is made by problematic people and media that contains problematic depictions of things and has bad politics. Like you're going to have to read stuff that isn't perfect. You can't demand ethical, moral purity from your media, but that doing so requires you to understand that it is bad and why it is bad, but that it is also good, right? Like that, like you have to understand the parts of it that work and why they work and what is good about it and what you could take away from it that is valuable. Right. And at the same time, accurately realize, okay, this is, like this contains this example of, I'm trying to think of Ender's Game examples, and I'm just blanking at the moment. Like all of the sort of, you are the specialist kid of all, and and only you matter, like the sort of main characteritis that happens with all chosen one media, right? And the idea that, like, I don't know, there are things you can pull from these books that are valuable, and ones that, as long as you can maintain a healthy conception of their flaws, it is still worth it to engage with.
Yeah, and I'd actually go one step further and say that the important bit is, and while we can talk about, supporting people in endeavors that, or supporting people financially, that, all of those things, but the important bit is that part. It's the experience. It's the important part for you, the consumer of the media, is that overlap in the Venn diagram between the book and you, right. Where you are experiencing it, where you're having emotional reactions to it, where you're taking stuff that maybe even the author didn't intend into your own heart or head, or whatever you want to conceptualize it as.
And similarly, if you read or engage with a piece of media and you resonate with it, and you resonate with it for reasons that you upon later reflection, or finally seeing the perspective on it, realize, oh, I reflected with all of the bad crap out of this thing, right? That is an important lesson that you might not learn about yourself if you don't engage with those bad media. I will mention offhand the cinematic masterpiece and horrible dumpster fire that is Boondock Saints.
Yes.
In many ways, a perfect movie.
I watched in many ways an embarrassing number of times.
Yeah. Oh, me too. I'm not surprised at all. We are of the same generation. We are of a similar proclivity. Yes, of course you would have been obsessed with. I will, to this day, Blood of Cuchulainn is a fucking banger. That is one of the best songs ever written. Anyway, it is a stellarly constructed movie that is like laser focused at bringing out all of the bad parts of being a young man in Western culture. Like it targets everything that society has told you it is good to be a man that are actually fucking terrible idea. Like this, like the asshole parts of you. It is laser targets to hit those points, those big pressure points that are on you, and like exploit them. And it is important to understand why you react to those things in order to like grow as a person. Like if you don't have the introspection to like figure out, oh, I liked this thing and I liked it because of all of this shit that was wrong with it, and that says something about me, and I need to work on me because of that. And then at the end of the day, you can still probably you can enjoy parts of that movie that, knowing that it, what it is and what it represents.
And, it would have been fascinating if it had gone a similar path to The Matrix, honestly, because they share a similar, gun fu kind of like vibe. But then, you look at Boondock Saints 2 versus, say, Matrix Resurrected. Resurrected is like, hey, let's decompose all of the things that we talked about in the movie. Whereas Boondock Saints 2 is, let's do more shooting.
Yeah. Except less stylishly and good all around. Anyway, Boondock Saints, not a good follow-up. But like, that being said, it's not like Matrix Revolutions and Resurrection are all that well regarded in the popular culture either.
No,
they're getting a bit of a resurgence now.
I'd highly recommend watching the movies with Mikey about.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like those. What's I mind you, I haven't seen either of the follow-up movies except the like coolest bits off YouTube, right? In a long time. So it's entirely possible that I would approach those with a different eye. Now I remember at the time not gelling with them. But it's entirely possible that upon further inspection they would be better. I don't know. Time could not be kind to the effects in the third movie where everybody looks like they're made out of rubber. The bad human CG, which looked bad at the time. And I can't imagine that has been redeemed by perspective.
Yeah. But I still distinctly remember being up in San Francisco at a thing for, it's complicated to explain, with some school friends, and my buddy Jason was like, you haven't seen The Matrix, and called movie phone, figured out when the absolute last showing of it was down in the AMC Mercado in San Jose, and we drove at extremely unsafe speeds down to it so that we could catch it right when it started.
Yeah. The original Matrix, the Matrix, is another one of those kind of perfect movies. And I think doesn't need quite so much apologism to be able to enjoy.
And I feel a little guilty talking about the Wachowski sisters in this conversation about problematic faves because they sort of are the antithesis of that. Yeah.
I haven't heard a lot about them in the past few years, but they're I haven't heard anything bad, which is a good sign. And Speed Racer is fucking good. I don't care what anybody says, because Speed Racer is fucking good. I was lied to when that movie came out, and it is a stylish masterpiece.
You have to watch it on like a 70-inch screen with your face about 5 feet away from it, and then you have to go lie down for a bit. But,
and you need it is a movie where you should fully expect to turn off large sections of your brain, like a dolphin that is asleep. You need to turn off an entire hemisphere. Because it is not that kind of movie.
No.
But it is thoroughly enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. It really is.
Yeah. No. Yeah. And I don't think they're problematic fits. I'm trying to think of anybody else who falls into that category for me. Not without bringing up Mr. Whedon, who I spent an entire hour talking to Jack about just recently.
God,
Aaron Sorkin. There's another one. Yeah. I'm not sure. I don't know.
I love The West Wing. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care if it's a liberal fantasy.
I think, it's entirely possible that West Wing did more damage to an entire half of American politics than anything else, other than the fucking Goldwater campaign. But
if you can watch Noelle without tears streaming down your face,
or fucking,
I don't want to know you.
Bartlett's speech in Two Cathedrals, or fucking, I mean, like my first love of Sorkin's was Sports Night, and I still Sports Night lived, like, it's such, like, the dialogue, the characters, it is still ingrained in me.
I need to do the Casey and Dan hand slap with you.
It's so good. His ability to make me care about things, like that's things, I don't like sports, but I care about the way that he talks about sports, and he just carried that over to The West Wing, and then less successfully to Studio 60, and then again really well into The Newsroom and like various other, but like, dude, that fucker can write. My God.
When he's not blotto out of his mind on cocaine.
No, I mean, sometimes when he is blotto out of his mind on cocaine, I mean, that's West Wing for you, man. He wrote like the first 4 seasons. I think he just wrote the entire thing.
Yeah.
And like, there's this, God.
There was a movie adaptation of Ender's Game. I didn't watch it.
Was there? Oh yeah, there was, wasn't there?
I think Asa Butterfield.
Okay.
Was that the guy's name? I can't remember.
I don't.
I didn't watch it. What's funny is, OSC hadn't turned like this. I could see like prestige TV easy of the first book. Yeah,
no, it would. I'm surprised we. Well, yeah, no, I would almost be surprised if they still don't do it, because like that's a lot of money on the table, because that first plot is really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess you're right that maybe
you could stretch that 2 or 3 seasons easy.
Oh yeah, for sure. It would be a really hard transition into that post Ender's Game world. There's some, I mean, like, we've been ragging on it a little bit, but like there's some really wild ideas. Like the
life cycle of the piggies, for example, is just like super inventive.
Yeah, and one like the whole concept of where like the whole reason all of the life cycles on that planet are fucked up is because another alien species sent a virus because they communicate using viruses with each other, and that's how they expected to like make first contact, and instead they ruined the ecosystem of an entire planet. And then like that's the plot of the book, is trying to remove this virus from this ecosystem so that they can like, they won't be then destroyed by the central government. There's some wild ass shit in there, and it's neat. But then there's also like, oh yeah, by the way, souls are literally a thing, by the way. Like they really exist, and they like, we can like move them around by going outside of the universe. And oh yeah, by the way, this the computer program from like that first book, the really weird alternate reality game, yeah, that's also like a robot mind, or like an AI that loves Ender, like is in love with him, really loves him. It's like, okay, why? Yeah, sure, all right, I'm down.
And I didn't even remember the plot of Xenocide. I read it. I don't remember it at all.
Yeah, I mean, like I got to the way to the end of Children of the Mind, which is the one when Ender finally fucking dies, but except he doesn't die because his soul goes into a copy of his dead brother that he made from his imagination because they went outside the universe, but he also made a copy of his sister, and that's where the AI's soul went, because apparently the AI has a soul too. I don't know. I just think it's hilarious when you try to describe this stuff happening.
I see where the LDS stuff is stinking in.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's there from the beginning too. Like his parents, like there's, you mentioned the whole thing about them being allowed a third children, but like there's a whole plot where they're like, oh, we would have had one anyway because we think it is our God-given right, and it is important for us to have as many children as possible. And it's like, I remember even as a high schooler being like, what?
Yeah.
Fucking Harrison Ford was in that movie?
Yes, as Graf, right?
As Graf, yeah. As apparently was Ben Kingsley as Mazer Rackham.
I mean, look, Ben Kingsley is British, right?
Yeah. I think.
Have you seen the early 2000s Dungeons and Dragons movie with Jeremy Irons?
No, I have not. I've only heard about it in Legends.
I think that British actors just will take any part that they're offered.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. They're like working guys, right?
And they will do it 110%, and they'll take that paycheck and go off to the Maldives for a couple of weeks.
Oh, yeah. Look at fucking John Hurt. Like, John Hurt was in everything.
Yeah.
Like, he just was in everything. He just worked steadily for like 60 years and like never turned, as far as I can tell, never turned down a role. Some of those are absolute bangers, and some of them are real stinkers. Him and the Storyteller is just so good. Do you know Jim Henson's The Storyteller?
I know it exists. I never watched it.
It's the Jim Henson's studio. They just are retelling old fairy tales. Like, that's the whole thing. And they were doing this sort of Brothers Grimm version of most of them, where they're the darker, like kind of, grosser version. It's not like papered over like people expect them to be for children.
Gotcha.
And the amount of it's early digital, so there's some digital work in there, but it is mostly practical effects, and it's like they're pulling out movie level quality practical effects for just a kids TV show, like ostensibly aimed at children, and it is beautiful. The writing in it is pretty good too, but like it's highly worth it. The second season, not so much, because that was about Greek myths, and it didn't really work so much. It's also just about one of the only appearance of one of my favorite Muppets of all time, which is the dog from The Storyteller, who is a wonderful puppet. Like, it's still obviously a Muppet, but like a little bit more realistic.
Did they use that one in the Muppet Christmas special?
I am almost certain that you're thinking of Sprocket from Fraggle Rock, who does.
Oh, you're right.
There, who's also a very good Muppet. God, I like, I haven't ever done cosplay, but I like movie props, and I've often been thinking about remaking stuff. And I so want to make a Muppet. I really want to make a Muppet. And just deciding which Muppet you're going to make is really hard.
Well, and then with Breathing Space, we could just make an entire episode that we say is Muppets.
I need to get people to like send me in Muppet voices, because there was an episode or one of the segments during last season's finale where we had the puppets, and like I don't go listen to other people's things that I'm not casting. I did go listen to those castings because it was amazing. I
bet.
Yeah, it just like it's people have puppet voices. It's so good.
Well, I just sound like Kermit naturally, so.
I've got a pretty good Rolf the dog. It's not too bad. It's about my only good one. I want so bad to be able to do a Gonzo, and I just can't, and it bugs the crap out of me. I love Gonzo so much, and I can't do his voice. He's got that like weird creaky thing going on, but I can't. My voice doesn't do it, and it bugs. If you've heard the thing where like just about every guy thinks he's got a Kermit. Like, maybe you should make a Sweetums costume. Sweetums is.
You just sort of drape rags all over yourself, right?
Well, and he's got the giant head that you need to then have a mechanism for. Actually, speaking of Muppet Christmas Carol, the Ghost of Christmas Present would be a fucking badass costume to have too. I don't know how we got onto talking about what fucking Muppet I want to build, but this might be the farthest I've gone on one of these episodes. Yeah.
I'm very good at bringing that out in people. See also Babylon Project.
You're not even on that one. That's just like you're just like transmitting that energy remotely. Then.
I take full responsibility for inflicting that on the internet.
Well, is there anything else you want to cover with regards to Ender's Game or other funny stuff before we close it out?
No, not really.
It's late. Let's just go. We're both too old for that.
I feel like Harrison Ford and shrinking.
Okay. Well, we're gonna call it here. So, okay. Bye, guys.
Well, that does it for Media That Made Us. Thanks again to Aaron for showing up and frankly just shooting the shit with me, because this was barely an interview. We were just chatting for most of that. If you want to check out Aaron's projects, look for the links in the description to this episode. If you want to help the podcast out, why don't you recommend us to a friend, or head on over to patreon.com/cursedknowledge and sling us a couple of bucks to keep the lights on. I have been your host, Scott Paladin, and this has been a production of the Library of Cursed Knowledge Podcast Network.